welcome to our free session and training on making the most of expat vacations and avoiding the common traps when you go home. So excited to have you with me here. It is the morning in the US and the afternoon in Europe and evening in Asia. That's where you're calling from in. So thanks for being here. I'm excited. And let me tell you a little bit about what we'll do on our session today. So it is 10 a.m. actually in New York and 4 p.m. in Johannesburg and 9 p.m. in Bangkok. And if you are just joining me for the very first time, I want you to know that I am Sunday Schneider-Bean. I am an intercultural strategist and a solution-oriented coach. And you know I am on a mission to make the most of expat life, and that includes any life transition. And one of those transitions for expats, if you live abroad, is taking your family or your loved ones and going back home. So going back home on a vacation is an important thing for those of you who live far, far away. And we spend a lot of time and a lot of money doing that. So it's really worth spending some time. And I am delivering my training right now from my home birthplace. So this is my father's office, actually, in the place where I spent the very formative years. And when this was my actual bedroom, it was bright yellow. So if you can imagine that, this is now my dad's office. So if anybody knows how to make the most out of a vacation, and also especially if you're working on an online company like mine where you have to keep working while you're away, I can say that it can be challenging. So let's get started. This is calling in from my workcation in Williston, North Dakota. And we'll get started on what we're going to cover in this training. But before I do that, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here. I know that if you're viewing this live, or if you'll be looking at the recording afterwards, that you have very limited time and energy. So it really means a lot to me that you showed up for this session to learn more about how to make the most of your vacations far, far from home. The other caveat I wanted to say before we get started is that some of you might be asking, well, where is home? So I know that not everybody was born and raised in one place and then moved abroad. Some of you moved every 2 to 3 years. So home can be very hard to define. And for those of you who are saying, where is home? I really don't know where that is. I have an article for you that I'll share in the comments at the end of this session to help you find that answer for yourself. So very good. So to get started, I want you to tell me, would you spend $10,000 on a car and then crash it into a tree? Obviously, the answer is no. And that is why we do that sometimes when we take trips and visit family home. We invest all this time and money, and we get there and we're not resting, we're not connecting with loved ones, and we feel like we would be more relaxed if we had actually just stayed home. So I want to help you avoid those traps. And to do that, I'm going to talk about the 3 traps you're likely to fall into when you head on a vacation as an expat, and what you can do to avoid those traps. So these are the 3 traps that I see all the time. I've worked with clients from all over the world, and I've had my own experience going from multiple continents with my kids and trying to make the best of seeing my friends and family wherever they are. So here are the 3 traps I see happening all the time. Trap 1 is called the path not taken. 2, what I call vacation conflation. And 3 is expecting your family to understand you. And that's a really big one. So let's go one by one and look at the 3 traps that we often fall into when we go back home to visit family and friends. So the path not taken. Now this one looks like an expat in my circle from Europe said the hardest part about going home is seeing the other path my life could have taken had I not left. So the other path my life could have taken had I not left. And this can be painful when you look back on your life and you see what people who still live there are experiencing. And the problem is, it makes an assumption that you either stayed home or you lived abroad. But the truth of the matter is it's really not binary. It's not an either or thing. This is just your path. And along the way, you took the next step, and that next step led you to the life that you're living. And I know that for me, I didn't choose a life abroad. This wasn't something I said, yes, I'm going to do this or that. I stumbled into a guy that I really cared for, and because he was from another country, it led me to a life abroad. So I said yes to a relationship, and indirectly, I said yes to an international lifestyle. But this is not something, it wasn't an either or situation. Had you stayed, you would have just taken the next best step as well. And who knows where that would have left you. Okay, so when we believe there was a clean path, a second option, had you not left, you're really torturing yourself because you're imagining it's binary, that it's either on or off, abroad or at home. And that's just not the case. It's really your journey. So who knows? And when you do that, it's like you're flirting with the idea of having never left. It's the equivalent of, I don't know, thinking about your high school boyfriend and wondering, wait a minute, why did we broke up? If we had just stayed together, then my life would be different. Well, that's not possible because you didn't stay together, and there were good reasons for that. So it's the same thing. Stop flirting with the idea of having never lived in a national lifestyle. And I know that for most of my clients, it's not a choice. It's something they feel compelled to do. They were drawn to do. They were drawn to specific careers, drawn to specific people. So in the end, there wasn't really an alternative because you made the absolute best decision every step of the way. Okay, so stop flirting with this romantic idea of the way things could have been, right? No matter how cute or good looking this idea may be, because your energy can be focused in a different direction. So here is how you escape trap one. Trap one is the path not taken. So when you're back home, instead of focusing on what could have been, instead I want you to name what you've gained from the journey. Okay, name what you've gained from the journey. By naming it, you really focus on what you've gained, what has added to your life. And when I do this with my clients, they end up coming up with a really long list of things that they happen to be very proud of. So if you're susceptible to trap one, then I want you to identify what you've gained, because that wouldn't have been possible in the same way had you done something different. Okay, so if you're in trap one, your assignment is to spend 5 to 10 minutes brainstorming all that you've gained since living abroad. Okay, so it is easy to fall into these traps, and I know how it feels when you're on vacation. You love all the familiar ways to interact. You love the services that you're used to, the quality. Maybe you love feeling like you belong, or that you can speak fluently in your native language. And you might be really, really tempted to think that it would be great if you lived next door to grandma and grandpa, right? So this is, if you're feeling any of those things, then you're in the danger of falling into trap two. And trap two is what I call vacation conflation. So vacation conflation is where you confuse how it feels on vacation is how it would be to live there. Okay, and I know I'm guilty of this as well. You get there and you're having an amazing time. Your kids love it. Your partner loves it. You'll feel great. You feel amazing. And you think, God, why don't we live here? This would be amazing. But the problem is you are not living there. You're on vacation. So don't confuse the way you feel and how it is to be in a location when you're on vacation with how it would be to live everyday life there, because everyday life would be much different. Okay, so here's how you can escape trap two, vacation conflation. Remember that it's a vacation. All right, next, notice the stresses of everyday life for other people. If you talk to friends who live there, they don't feel like their everyday life is a pure vacation. They feel like, they're going to work, they're bringing the kids to school, they're grocery shopping, they're doing the everyday, right? They're not spending money on hotels and going into pools or whatever you might be doing on your vacation or visit back home. And remember, you're there probably during the best time of year, when the weather is amazing or when there's a wonderful holiday to celebrate. And those who are there have to go through the entire year. So maybe the really snowy months or the cold months or the rainy months or whatever it might be. Okay. And the other thing that I think is really hard for expats when they go back home is they're surrounded by people who make time for them and love them and miss them and tell them that. And this is going to be really hard to hear, but I'm going to say it. If you lived there, if you were there every day, you would not be showered with love and attention and time if you really were there full time. So I know this from people who go back to their location and are repats who move back. They end up being surprised because people are too busy and they don't make time for them. And that warm welcome feeling is missing because you're there every day. You're taken for granted. And not in a negative way, but in a, hey, we live in the same town now. You're not something rare that I need to spend time with. So that is something with vacation conflation where you might mistake the fact that if you live there, you would be able to connect with people in the way that you do on an everyday basis. And that's just not true. People, some of your friends might make it a special point to spend time with you. That means out of their regular stressful day. So if you were there full time, they wouldn't be able to make that special time during the work week or on a special evening as they would when you're only there once a year. Okay, so that one's really important to be mindful of, that you're kind of susceptible for this idea of vacation conflation. Okay, so to avoid trap 2, vacation conflation, this is what you can do. Ask yourself, what does real life look like for most people in the area that you're thinking about moving back to? Okay, that means school trips, traffic, work life, vacation times, etc. Okay, what are the stresses, the realities of the location? What are the limitations in the location? And how are you behaving differently than if you lived there on an everyday? Okay, the other thing that you might want to do is go back to why. Go back to the big why. Why are you living abroad? What is the reason that you're living abroad? What factors, what are the things that you're yearning for? Maybe you were yearning for cultural diversity. And if that's what drew you to a life abroad and it's not present in the place you were thinking about, then that would be missing when you got back, right? So the big why is also important to think about. Okay, so we've talked about 2 traps so far. The first one is the path not taken. The second one is what I call vacation conflation. And the third one is trap 3, expecting your family to understand you. So this is a tough one, and this is something that a lot of my clients bring to me. So if any of my clients are listening to this or the recording, I did this just for you because it's hard when you love your people dearly and you come back and you feel like they just don't understand me. They don't get me. And for those of you who have lived abroad in multiple places or been through really crazy things that are related to living abroad, you change, obviously, and your worldview changes and the way you think changes. Maybe you parent differently, maybe you eat differently, maybe you speak differently, maybe your political views have changed. And for those who have stayed in one area, the changes that have gone on might not be quite as dramatic or quite as obvious at the surface. So when you get there and you've changed, but your family doesn't understand you, then that can be really painful. Some people complain about, this is like the classic study abroad phenomena. Someone studies abroad for a year and they come back and they have all these new experiences to share. And people say, how was your trip? And you say, oh, it was amazing. And then that's it. And then you move on to what the everyday is there. And for those who've had that experience, they feel exploding with new experiences and learning and changes they want to share. And when people don't show interest in that, they can feel shut down, like nobody cares. But listen, one perspective you might want to think about is if you, let's say someone went to war as a soldier or spent some time in Afghanistan. that experience is so far away from my everyday. I don't even know what I would ask. Where would I begin? And maybe I would be afraid that some of my questions were insensitive or stupid. It's the same thing for an experience that feels really far away. For people who don't change countries like tables at a restaurant, they might not know where to begin. Okay, so this isn't necessarily about a lack of interest. It could be about a lack of knowing where to start or where to get hooked in. Okay, and let me be really clear. It is not their job to understand you. Not at all. They don't need to understand you. It's not their job. Your job is to share who you are. Okay, so you need to, when you are expecting your family to understand you, you're in their business. That's not your job. Your business is to understand yourself, how you've grown, and share that with other people. Okay, so if you're feeling susceptible to trap 3, that my family doesn't understand me, I want you to do something else. I want you to do this instead. You ask yourself, how can I create connection? How can I create connection with my family? And it could be as simple as sharing things. You could share photos, you could share experiences, but really in small doses, because not everybody wants to see 1,000 pictures of something that you've experienced, but in small doses. And when you give something like an image, people then have better questions to ask. So share images, share stories in small doses. Okay, so that's the way you can do it, share connection. It could also be the case that you've shared so dramatically that the way in which you differ can feel really painful, because maybe you have like very different political views. So this is something you have to decide for yourself, what feels right and what feels authentic for you. But another thing you can do is just focus on, how can I connect now? What do we have in common? How can I feel authentic and close and have them see me now? Okay, and save some of the political things or the dramatic transformations to come out little by little, slowly, when you've reconnected with people. Okay, so to get started, follow my rule that I tell my kids. Show me, don't tell me. All right, so you show people who you are now. You share that in doses. And you can share pieces of your life through photos, through things that you bring with you, and through stories that you tell. Okay, there's no need to hide those. I know some people feel weird about sharing their stories from abroad because others might perceive you as being elite, but that's not the case. That's not what we're looking at here. We're looking at, how do you share your stories so you let people in on your life and not block them out. Okay, so again, show me, don't tell me. Share little bits in stories, in pictures, in maybe little videos, but in small doses. And then when you catch yourself saying, well, they don't understand me, then I would ask you, or they don't understand how much I've changed. Well, then what are you making that mean? Are you making it mean that they don't love you? That's not true, right? That's just not true. That's just another transition where people are catching up with who you are now, bit by bit. Okay, so if you're feeling any one of these 3 traps, the first one is the path not taken, the second is vacation conflation, and the third one is, what did I say was, my family doesn't understand me. Then my advice to you is, do not make any dramatic decisions. Okay, at this point you're feeling vulnerable, you're feeling, you're tempted by things, so don't make any dramatic or rash decisions. Don't quit your job, don't move back right away, slow down. All that you need to do is balance your perspective. Okay, remember your big why. Why did you end up choosing life that led you abroad? Okay, remember that you have a balanced perspective in what is a real life situation there as well, in terms of normal stresses, ups and downs. Second thing is, get really curious about these ups and downs. When you're loving something about being back home, what does it say that you value about what you need more of in your life? I know when I come home, I love the land. I love the physical space. I love customer service where you have a conversation and you can joke with someone. Those are things I love. And that says to me that I love being out in nature and I love connection. So those are things that I can go back and say, well, how can I create more of that And how can I have more of that in my life back home, or my other home, right? The other thing is when things are frustrating, when you have downs, well, then think about, well, what am I missing there? So get curious about the ups and downs. Okay, remember, those ups and downs are simply a reflection that you've grown, that you're developing. It doesn't mean that your family doesn't love you. It doesn't mean that they can't understand you. It just means that you're changing, and that means growth, and that's really okay. And if your family doesn't understand all of those changes and that growth, that doesn't mean anything. That means you've changed, and you can know how you've changed for you and leave it at that for now, and then step by step bring people in on the ways in which you've changed. Okay, so the third piece of advice is don't torture yourself. Remember, this is a vacation, and part of the problem is that we love the life that we live abroad of change and new cultural learning, but we also love the familiar. So we do what a friend of mine says in Italian. She says, you can't have a full barrel and the wife drunk. So what that means is you can't have tons of change and stability. You can't have the exotic and the familiar at the same time, but you can get it, but maybe in different times or different locations. So don't torture yourself if you're feeling that way. All right, so finally, my last bit on how to really avoid these 4 traps is take responsibility for you. Okay, if you want people to understand you more, then how can you create connection? How can you articulate how you've changed to yourself? Follow my mantra, show me, don't tell me, and honestly, let go of the outcome. All right, stand strong in who you are now, and what that means for you and your growth. And you don't need anybody to get that. The first person that needs to get that is you. Okay, so remember, the ups and downs are normal. We all fall into the traps of how to, do expat vacations the wrong way. I've done it myself many times. And know that when things get bumpy, you can learn from it and make better choices next time. Okay, so your assignment for this session is to identify which traps that you're susceptible to and do the work for that trap. So trap 1 was the path not taken. The focus is on what you've gained. Trap 2 is vacation conflation. Here you have to remember your big why for living abroad and open your view to the stresses of everyday life in the location that you're flirting with. And trap 3 is that my family should understand me. And your assignment there is to get really clear on what you can do to create connection. Okay, so that was it, my June training that I promised all of you. If you did not catch this live, but you're viewing it later, be in touch and let me know what questions you have. If you're on the call now and you want to ask me a few questions now, I can answer in the comments. So thank you for joining me. I see some familiar faces from home and some friends I've met abroad. So that's really nice. Hi, guys. And in terms of resources, I did mention, for those of you who are saying, Sunday, I don't even know where home is, then go to my blog. The article is The Struggle with the Question, Where is Home? Okay, you can go to my blog anytime. You can look at the blog section, go to categories and type in expat vacations, and you'll get a long list of resources, anything from surviving jet lag to eating well on vacation, and what things to do before you go. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for showing up, and for the next training I'll be doing for my community at Schneider-Bean.com, it'll be July 27th, where we talk about making an expat life upgrade. That means all of the things that you wish you could do to improve your life, but you just haven't figured it out yet how to do it. Okay, you guys, thank you for joining me. I will talk to you in the next training, and let me know if you have any questions. Take care.